The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network. Every night as we drift between sleeping and waking, we move through worlds of untapped potential. In her new book, Dreamifesting, Kelly Sullivan Walden invites you into a transformative exploration of the space between sleep and waking life, showing you how to harness the power of dreams. Dreamifesting reveals how to set intentions before sleep, decode dream messages, and awaken to hidden opportunities. Dreamifesting, a nightly transformation tool, is now available wherever books and audiobooks are sold.
Raise the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to our award-winning podcast, Mental Health, Hope, and Recovery. I'm Helen Sneed.
And I'm Valerie Milburn.
We both have fought and overcome severe chronic mental illnesses. Our podcast offers a unique approach to mental health conditions. We provide practical skills, guest experts, and inspirational true stories of recovery. Our knowledge is up close and personal.
Helen and I are your peers. We're not doctors, therapists, or social workers. We're not professionals, but we are experts. We are experts in our own lived experience with multiple mental health diagnoses and symptoms. Please join us on our journey.
We live in recovery. So can you.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. The information presented is not intended to be a substitute for or relied upon as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The podcast is for informational purposes only. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health providers with any health-related questions you may have.
Welcome to episode 58, Attacking Anxiety. Anxiety is a normal emotion for many people. Public speaking, a job interview, even a blind date can create the most unpleasant unease and tension that stress us out and cause the nagging doubts and physical flutters of anxiety. In its more extreme manifestation, what many people fight is a disorder that can encompass and disfigure their lives. Anxiety disorder, our topic today, is now the most prevalent mental illness in the U.S. and worldwide, a position formerly held for decades by depression. In fact, it's often said that we are living in the age of anxiety. Valerie, I guess you could say that you and we are both true experts in the intense and long-lived struggle to overcome anxiety disorder.
Yeah, I think we could say that. I mean, for me, anxiety has been an unwanted companion through much of my life. And of the 4 mental health disorders I live with, it's the one that challenges my recovery the most. This is a major reason that we want to tackle anxiety disorders today. We want to examine what it is, its symptoms and causes, the terrible impact it has on the individual, and the proven treatment methods and practices that can lead to a path of relief and recovery. Helen, you and I have made this journey with a great deal of success. In this episode, we hope to share what we've learned.
Yes, we have learned a lot, as I found out in getting ready for this particular episode, which has been most illuminating. But let's begin by just naming anxiety. So here are a couple of definitions. Oxford says anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease about something with an uncertain outcome. The American Psychological Association says an emotion characterized by apprehension and somatic symptoms of tension in which an individual anticipates impending danger, catastrophe, or misfortune. And the Cleveland Clinic defines anxiety disorder this way. Anxiety interferes with your ability to function. Your reactions are often out of proportion to situations, and you can't control your responses to situations, mental or physical.
You just mentioned that anxiety can present as reactions that are often out of proportion to situations. That's overreacting to situations. I have a recent example of that. And this type of overreacting is an ongoing battle for me. And battle is the right word. It's the equivalent of combat for me to conquer my ruminating thoughts. So here's an example. Recently, I sent a text that was a simple question. I didn't get a reply for a full day. So I started picking apart the wording of my text, even though it was just a simple question. I wondered if I had offended my friend. I thought of all the negative ways she could have interpreted my words. I reworded that text in my head dozens of times. I was thinking of how I could have written it differently or of how wrong I had been. And this great quote comes to mind. Anxiety is not being able to sleep because you said something wrong 2 years ago and can't stop thinking about it.
The story of my life.
While I'm waiting for this reply to the text, the self-destructive thoughts are just whirling around in my head. Now, my sponsor at this point would have said, put the bat down. Yes, I needed to stop beating myself up, but I didn't do that. My anxiety was so high by the second day of no response that I was convinced that I had seriously offended my friend, that she wasn't speaking to me. Well, the truth to this situation, my friend was out of the country. She texted me that night when she got home, and she came over the following day, and she had made a dessert for me and my husband. So what, I overreact? But you know what? I have a toolbox of skills and strategies for managing my anxiety that I'll talk about later. Well, I obviously failed to open my toolbox this time.
I wish I were more surprised by anything you described, Valerie, but I'm just not. For me, anxiety was the very beginning of decades of severe mental illness, and it dropped out of nowhere like a thick shroud, and my life was never to be the same. I mean, one day I was living in New York City. I was having a fine 1 minute, and the next I couldn't breathe. I began to gasp for air, certain that I was dying, and holding me up, my roommates took me out to the street and hailed a cab. In the back seat, I began to convulse due to lack of oxygen. Well, the cab driver took my roommate and me to Mount Sinai Hospital emergency room, and the doctor there told me I was having a panic attack and gave me a sedative. And it calmed me down, and gradually I could breathe again, but this began a daily cycle. A massive panic attack in the morning, a pill to stop it. The rest of the day I spent in a deep, paralyzing depression. I mean, I couldn't move. And then by nightfall, I felt decent again. Well, after several more trips to Mount Sinai, the staff there said I needed immediate treatment and referred me to a psychiatrist. And that was it for me. Anxiety had stopped me dead in my tracks. And thank heavens, at the time, I didn't know the journey would take more than 40 years. Way more than half my life.
Well, your journey with anxiety has indeed been long and arduous, and I think it's great that we're addressing treatment methods for anxiety in a bit, because today's treatment options can ease the road of living with an anxiety disorder. Helen, as you mentioned earlier, today anxiety disorders are the most common mental health concerns in the United States. Over 40 million adults in the U.S., 20% have an anxiety disorder. 20% of U.S. adults have an anxiety disorder, and approximately 7% of children aged 3 to 17 experience issues with anxiety each year. And most people develop symptoms before age 21.
It is remarkable to me that 20% of us in America are suffering from this one disorder. So let's look at the causes of it. So anxiety disorders are caused by brain changes, chemical imbalance, stress hormones. Chronic anxiety leads to a flooding in the brain of these hormones that are toxic to brain cells. Genetics. It runs in families, genetic influences in areas of the brain that deal with anxiety, and the learned behavior from a child observing an adult family member with anxiety symptoms and behaviors. Environmental factors, abuse, neglect, a traumatic event. This can trigger the development of these disorders, and it's similar to post-traumatic stress disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Stress over a long period, especially when the fight or flight response is triggered and remains high, so that the brain is in a constant cycle of high alert and danger. And finally, social media. Its impact and the anxiety it creates are still being studied.
That's a great list. Thanks for sharing those causes and the entire topic of what social media how social media has impacted mental health of this country and particularly our youth. We need to do an entire episode on it, Helen. We could probably do a series of episodes on it.
Yes, we can. We will.
We will. So that was causes. Now symptoms. Common anxiety signs and symptoms include both mental and physical symptoms. The mental symptoms include feeling nervous, restless, or tense, having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom, having trouble concentrating or thinking about anything other than the present worry, and an urge to avoid things that trigger anxiety. The physical symptoms include an increased heart rate, breathing rapidly, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, trouble sleeping, and an upset stomach or other problems with digestion. Now, comorbidity associated with anxiety. Comorbidity, having two or more illnesses at the same time, is the norm rather than the exception for individuals with an anxiety disorder. Depression is the most common co-occurring disorder, with estimates suggesting 60% of people with an anxiety disorder will also experience depression and vice versa. And the coexistence or overlap of disorders increases the complexities of diagnosis and treatment for both the psychiatrist and the patient.
Now, the truer words were never spoken. This multiple diagnoses can really be difficult to unravel.
Absolutely.
So let's look at the impact of anxiety on the brain, and it is substantial. To begin with, the amygdala, which handles fear and threat detection, grows larger with chronic anxiety, and this results in the heightened response to perceived threats. It's overactive. It keeps the brain chronically on high alert. Then there's the hippocampus, which is the center of learning and memory. It shrinks and becomes impaired. Harder to form memories or retrieve old ones, it can affect one's ability to learn and to learn from past experiences. And then there is the prefrontal cortex, PFC. It is so important. It's the center for executive functions, rational thinking, problem solving, emotional regulation. Anxiety shrinks it and impairs its functioning. Now, here is the impact on the functioning brain. All right. A heightened threat response makes it difficult to think rationally. There's cognitive impairments, difficulties with concentration and learning, making decisions, and retaining information. Emotional dysregulation, which we keep mentioning, the weakened connection between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex makes it possible for the amygdala to hijack the brain, and this creates loss of control over rational responses. And then finally, the increased risk of other disorders. Structural and functional changes in the brain from anxiety can increase the risk of developing other disorders, even dementia.
You know, I didn't know about this strong impact on the brain caused by anxiety disorders until we did the research for this episode. But instead of it scaring me, alarming me, that part of your brain shrinks, part of your brain grows, that it can impact your memory, your ability to learn, even cause increased risks for dementia. Instead of being alarmed by that, I've actually been motivated to work even harder, to manage my anxiety, to use those tools in that toolbox that I don't always open. I'm more motivated to open it and to hone those skills.
I think that's a good way to, well, that's kind of why we're giving this episode today, which we'll get into in a minute. But that's a good approach to it, what you're describing.
Yeah, it's like we always say, education, education, education. Let's learn about it so that we can absolutely discover everything we can about the disorders that we are living with, so we can do the best job to live our best life with what our brains are given to work with. Let's talk about the major impact anxiety disorders have on the workplace. And it is, for the most part, increased absenteeism and loss of productivity. The American Psychiatric Association study found that employees with anxiety disorders have more than 1.5 times the risk of being absent for at least 2 weeks than those without anxiety, and more than double the risk of having poor work performance. So that's the impact on the workplace. Now let's talk about the impact on the individual. And Helen, you and I know that the best way to convey individual impact is through our own personal experience. So let's share how our own struggles with anxiety have affected our lives. For me, the major impacts have been self-inflicted misery and damage to relationships. And there's a great quote. Anxiety is nothing but repeatedly re-experiencing failure in advance. That is so true for me. I make myself miserable forecasting the absolute worst possible outcome of a situation, then imagining the event transpiring and experiencing the bodily sensations that would occur if I went through this terrible event that I have imagined. And then this event that I imagined and basically experienced never happens. It's
Never.
a way, yeah. You do the same thing, Helen?
Yes.
Well, like me, I know you would agree that it is a waste of time, energy, peace, serenity, and sanity. And going through these experiences damages my relationships because I become irritable, emotionally unavailable, self-centered. Anxiety becomes like a voice following me, and it eventually becomes the loudest voice in the room. My usually strong, healthy inner voice is drowned out. I lose my compass.
I think that's a very good way of describing it, that all sense of direction is gone. For me, I found a good description from Charles Spurgeon. He said, "Anxiety does not empty tomorrow of its sorrows, but only empties today of its strength." And so the impact of anxiety on my life, it really is literally immeasurable. When it first struck, I was completely ignorant, and this potent, cruel emotion rapidly destroyed the life I built in New York City. Now, it was way back in 1981, and I didn't have the skills or techniques or a qualified psychiatrist or effective medication, anything to help me deal with this tyrant that had taken over my ability to function. I had therapy twice a week, and I was massively medicated. But the anxiety persisted and became worse. The most effective thing they gave me, was a small brown paper bag that I was supposed to breathe into to stop the panic. Don't ask me how. It never worked. I'd be in the ladies' room at some restaurant, breathing into a bag, feeling like an idiot and panicked. But anyway, it didn't work.
It's quite the visual, Helen. Quite the visual.
It is a visual. It is a visual, I kept trying, but no. So the sad thing about this is when it all began, it was an exciting time in my life. My new musical was to be performed at a regional theater, and I was to be artist in residence there. Well, I never made it. The anxiety continued to grow and escalate. I scarcely left home, couldn't drive, couldn't attend any social situations or the life events of my loved ones. And although it changed in intensity over time, for 4 decades, anxiety influenced and blighted my existence.
There are a number of types of anxiety disorders, including generalized anxiety disorder, the most common, agoraphobia, panic disorder, specific phobias, and there are hundreds, social anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, and selective mutism. So generalized anxiety disorder is the first on that list, which the Cleveland Clinic defines as a mental health condition where one may feel excessive worry about everyday situations. Boom, that's me. Excessive worry, again, ruminating thoughts about everyday situations. Last weekend, my husband and I were with our grandkids and son-in-law in Houston while my daughter was away. On our way back to Austin, I realized I had forgotten to give my grandson the morning dose of a medicine he was taking. So I texted my son-in-law to let him know that I had forgotten. But did I just let him know that I had forgotten? Well, that was all I needed to do, right? Just tell him I had forgotten. Well, no, I had to give specifics on the dose and the timing. As if my brilliant son-in-law can't read a medication label, right? Well, he responded to my text with a sweet thank you, but an hour later, I wanted to check if he had given it to him. And then I remembered that he needed to get a gift for a birthday party that afternoon. Did he remember that too? Should I remind him about the medicine and the gift? What if my grandson didn't get his medicine? Or what if he showed up at the birthday party without a gift? But would it be insulting to send a reminder? I mean, my brain. I was still obsessing on these ridiculous thoughts when we hit Austin, an almost 3-hour drive from Houston. So yes, I can worry excessively about everyday situations.
Because you lost your compass.
Because I lost my compass and I didn't open my toolbox.
True. It's really true. Now, I just want to touch briefly on agoraphobia, mainly because I had it so badly. It's defined as the fear of places and situations that might cause panic, helplessness, or humiliation. Now, the most common meaning, I think, for most people when they hear agoraphobia is, it's someone who's afraid of leaving his or her house. They just can't leave home. But it can be caused by many things. I mean, it can be caused by the fear of having another panic attack. Michel de Montaigne said, "He who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears." And that's the box I was in.
That's an amazing quote. I have never heard that before. It's he who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears. There's another type of anxiety disorder that we mentioned, and that's panic disorder. And I am very fortunate that I have not had a panic attack in a very long time, though I continue to struggle with generalized anxiety disorder, as you already know, because I've shared 2 ways that I struggle with that. But I have had panic attacks in the past. The last bad one I had was one I'd like to share because I think sharing what a panic attack looks like for me helps others be able to identify what exactly a panic attack can be. The last one I had...
For a person to know what is happening to me, I think, and you're giving a name to it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's really important.
So I'm going to share one that I had years ago at a University of Texas versus University of Oklahoma football game. And for listeners not familiar with a UT-OU football game, It's a very crowded, very rowdy, high energy, intense event. The football stadium is at the Texas State Fairgrounds and happens during the Texas State Fair. And a large crowd funnels from the open fairgrounds into a smaller stadium entryway to get into the stadium. I was in that crowd. The entryway narrowed. The crowd closed in around me. I went on high alert. I thought about strangers bumping me, the possibility of someone touching me in a way I didn't want to be touched. Off went my mind, then off went my body. Pounding heart, pounding head, stomach churning, sweating. Then the worst, crying. I told my husband, "Get me out of here." He made as much of a barrier as he could around me with his arms and steered me to the edge of the crowd. So at least we got out of the middle of the herd as fast as we could, and we eventually got completely out of the crowd, and I did use my tools to pull myself back together. In that moment, the tools are diaphragmatic breathing, telling myself right here, right now, mindfully in that moment, proving to myself that in that moment I was safe. So that's what a panic attack looks like for me.
And feels like. That was a very descriptive and vivid depiction of what it's like. What I would like to look at now is called social anxiety disorder, SAD. I call it SAD. Prevention defines SAD as intense fear of being watched and judged by others. And Adam Gonzalez says, it's a persistent fear that one will behave in a way that's embarrassing and humiliating. Well, it's the double whammy, a lack of trust in others, a lack of trust in oneself. And this is one of the most accurate descriptions of myself I've ever read. My anxiety over being judged and found lacking made me not want to be seen. I did not want another pair of eyes looking at me. My appearance always has been a source of unending agony that drove me to extreme measures to try to improve the way I looked. I called clothing camouflage. It was something to hide me. Before meeting a friend, I'd feverishly change clothes a dozen times, but nothing lessened the anxiety, and I would cancel and not go. Couldn't leave my house. The hundreds and hundreds of missed opportunities to be with people, all the way from the social to those celebrations of major life events. Even funerals, I missed them all. And if I did manage to make myself go, I would obsess afterwards on the one comment that made me feel inferior, or something I had said that made me look stupid. And this stripped away any enjoyment of the event. It could have been fabulous. It was ruined for me. As I look back, I now know that no one in the wide green world could be as scathing a judge as I was of myself. And the best antidote to social anxiety is something Eleanor Roosevelt said long ago. You shouldn't worry so much about what others think if you realized how seldom they do.
I love that quote. It reminds me of something my sponsor says to me sometimes. She's very blunt, and I love her to death. She's been my sponsor for the entire 25 years of my sobriety. And sometimes when I go on about things like this, somebody was thinking this about me, somebody thinks this about me, I'm upset about this, I know this is what's happening. She looks at me and says, "You're just not that important."
Yeah, I think in the Eleanor Roosevelt quote, for me, I shouldn't admit this, but for me, hearing that, there's a trace of disappointment, Anyway, I'm sorry I outed myself on that one.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
Finally in your wellness era? Then you know gut health is gut wealth. And with 20 years of science behind it, Activia can help keep those good gut vibes going. Deliciously smooth and creamy, Activia probiotic yogurts and dailies have billions of live and active probiotics and help support gut health while you go about your day. Your gut is where it all begins, so start with Activia. Enjoying Activia twice a day for 2 weeks as part of a balanced diet and healthy lifestyle can help reduce the frequency of minor digestive discomfort.
But now let's take the high road and look at treatment methods, ways to overcome anxiety. Now, many experts assert that anxiety disorder is unlikely to resolve itself without treatment. Now, that alone is a pretty sobering statement. They hasten to add it's not a question of will, self-discipline, or attitude. It is a mental disorder that requires treatment to make recovery a possibility. Now, psychotherapy and medication are most frequently cited as the standard treatment. Now, however, there are other highly effective skills and methods that we will mention. So let's begin with psychotherapy, talk therapy. The therapeutic relationship generally will be the center of treatment. And so it's critical to find a therapist who is familiar with treating anxiety and with whom the person feels a positive connection. This is really important. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is frequently used in conjunction with talk therapy. And the end result is for the individual to identify, understand, and gradually face down the sources of anxiety. There's also dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and that is also very effective in teaching skills and techniques to deal head-on with anxiety and its ability to control daily living. Medication. Antidepressants are most commonly used in treating anxiety. SSRIs and other types can be very effective. Now, anti-anxiety medications can be very effective also in reducing symptoms. However, given the addiction potential, healthcare professionals recommend using them short-term, and for people with substance use disorders, not at all. Now, the good news is there are non-addictive anti-anxiety medications available. Education, knowledge. It's so important for the individual to understand what is happening. And so to learn everything that can be learned about anxiety, its treatment, its symptoms, its history, everything about it. And also, it can help tremendously. What I always like to say is, know your enemy. Now, then the relationships and communications. It's important, just find one person, a friend or family, to confide in about anxiety, the symptoms, the treatment, the fears and hopes, whatever the person is undergoing. And also try to find a peer, an individual who has suffered from anxiety that you can talk to about it with someone who really understands. Now, speaking of that, there is group therapy. This is the same thing, and it can also be extremely helpful and nurturing. And the safety and camaraderie of knowing other people in the same boat, and also the chance to learn from others skills and techniques to help reduce the symptoms. These things are invaluable. Then there are outpatient programs or hospitalization. These programs treat anxiety in a safe setting, and sometimes it helps to seek this kind of support in order to become strong enough to re-enter the world. This was true for me. Self-care. This is where the individual can learn to take control of their own road to recovery. Diet, exercise, sleep can contribute greatly to lessening anxiety. breathing, mindfulness, meditation are also very powerful, as are CBT and DBT skills, which I mentioned. And finally, limiting or avoiding caffeine. Just trust me on this one. It's true.
My last addiction is caffeine, but that list you just gave is an amazing list of traditional treatments, and I have so many of them in my toolbox. They are still the traditional and effective treatments, but there are also cutting-edge treatments on the horizon for anxiety disorders that I want to tell our listeners about because they're so exciting and promising. One is a digital therapy that the FDA cleared last year, and it's a digital therapy called Daylight, smartphone-based digital treatment for generalized anxiety disorder. It's a 90-day program that teaches users relaxation, cognitive restructuring, exposure exercises, and other techniques. And they are used to alter the thoughts and behaviors that drive anxiety. This, like I said, the FDA cleared for clinical trials, and the trial results show remission rates over 70%. Pretty cool trials. These are treatment trials.
Magnificent.
So now this is another one. These are research results from the University of Texas at Austin's Dell Medical School. They have developed a non-invasive, low-intensity ultrasound treatment for mood and anxiety disorders. And in a study this year, 2025, this treatment showed significant improvements in depression, anxiety, and PTSD symptoms after just 3 weeks. Like I said, exciting and promising. And there's one more I want to tell you about. I know, it's amazing. So this one was for depression and anxiety symptoms in older adults, and it's a 2024 University of Florida study that uses direct current stimulation to the brain, transcranial direct current stimulation. These benefits persisted for up to a year. The last thing I want to talk about on this cutting edge treatment that I geek out over, I think it's so incredibly interesting, and that's the trial results on psychedelics. The clinical trials on LSD for generalized anxiety disorder show promising results. Researchers believe that LSD may enhance neuroplasticity, allowing the brain to form new, healthier connections and helping to break persistent negative thought patterns. There's 2 other FDA-approved trials. One is on MDMA-assisted therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. This is revealing incredible hope for new treatments for PTSD. And then the other one is the ongoing studies on the use of psilocybin, the psychoactive compound in magic mushrooms. And these are the incredibly promising treatment options coming out for major depressive disorder and anxiety.
It makes my head spin, not from anxiety, but just with such excitement and anticipation of when these things will, come into common usage. I think that this is what probably what drives us to do our podcast episode by episode is the fact that we are finding so much evidence for hope. And so we always like to close on it. And Valerie, do you want to begin with telling about you and anxiety and hope?
Yes, I have so many things that I am hopeful about and for when it comes to the treatment of anxiety and my own journey with such improvement in the way I deal with my anxiety. And the first thing I want to talk about is something that I hope will change in the treatment of anxiety. There is anecdotal evidence in my life from friends and family members and mental health professionals that I know, anecdotal evidence that shows that some mental health professionals still prescribe addictive anti-anxiety medications to their patients who have substance use disorders. This is unnecessary because there are numerous non-addictive anti-anxiety medications to treat anxiety disorders. And my hope is that doctors will become better educated in this area and will find these non-addictive anti-anxiety medications for their patients with substance use disorders. Along this line, I can jump right into what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful, since I'm an addict, that I have been guided by my psychiatric healthcare professionals to the correct non-addictive medications and supplements. Because although anxiety is the last mental health symptom I struggle with on a regular basis, it is so much better than in the past. Yes, I have those difficult drives occasionally from Houston to Austin, but it's really so much rarer than it used to be. And it may be a 3-hour drive, but it used to be a 3-day spin of the inability to function the way I used to. I have these tools to bring my anxiety even more under control quicker. And these tools are mindfulness, diaphragmatic breathing, journaling, therapy, calling my sponsor, using dialectical and cognitive behavioral skills, checking for the actual truth of a situation, exercise, and proper sleep. My ongoing challenge is to reach into this toolbox faster and more often. The other major area of hope is what I just talked about, the clinical trials on psychedelics and other cutting-edge treatment options. These could bring relief for the 40 million Americans and more people worldwide who live with and are still struggling with an anxiety disorder.
Well, that is all very inspiring, and I'm just going to bother you, I guess, a lot about your toolbox from here on out. Just open it, Valerie. Please open it.
Thank you. As often as we talk, you can just like every day say, have you opened your toolbox today? Do you need to open your toolbox today? Is your toolbox full? Are the tools sharpened? Are they rusty? Have you oiled them? Ask me all those questions.
Okay, I will. So in my own relationship with anxiety disorder, I had a long way to go because I didn't trust others and I really didn't trust myself. But gradually, the treatment and relationships began to work. With hospitalization, my anxiety there was at a peak, and I would go out with a loved one, and the anxiety was so intense that I had to be taken back to the hospital. But one day, in the back seat of my parents' car, I was able to stop the panic attack with my thoughts. And I remembered the words of my favorite doctor who had talking about, my panic attack, said, realistically speaking, Helen, what are you afraid of? And those words came to mind, and it stopped the attack because you have to go, well, realistically speaking, nothing, I was out in the car with my parents. It was no big deal. I also learned that it was important for me to say it out loud. If I'm in a situation, I'll go, I'm having just a little anxiety. You don't have to say how bad it is. Or to someone else, you can say, I feel kind of nervous about this meeting. And in most cases, the other person had validation or advice. It's really helpful. Okay, medication. Finally, the right medication was added. I don't think I could have recovered without it. Group therapy, we've talked about it. For me, it was a blessing from the very beginning. My relationships, as opposed to feeling threatening and judgmental, became strengthening and healing. Self-care for me came last, but I gradually became strong enough to care about my well-being and to take action. Dialectical behavior therapy. It wasn't until DBT that I learned to control and conquer my anxiety. I developed skills that I could use by myself because those lonely hours are always the most dangerous for me. And through DBT, I learned to rely on myself. At last, I realized there was one person I could trust, me. Now, William James said what are, for me, the truest words about defeating anxiety. He said, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. Well, what he makes sound so simple is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, but I did it, and now I do it so frequently that I often don't even know that I'm doing it. It's like blinking. Now, recently, I had the beginning of a panic attack in my office based on what I was writing about. So here's what I did. I named it. you're having a panic attack. I found a positive thought. I told myself, you know what to do. I stood up and held onto the back of my chair and began breathing. Then I identified the cause. I told myself a panic attack was natural because of the difficult memories I was writing about. And I took action. I began to move about my office thinking, you know what to do, you know what to do. And it passed pretty quickly, and I was able to get back to work. Now, as I began to recover, I resolved that anxiety and panic attacks would never keep me home or stop me from loving, working, and giving back. Now, as I look back at the primitive treatments and medications available back in 1981, when I had my first panic attack, I feel renewed hope and optimism for the brave individuals in the midst of the battle today. There's more knowledge about the disorder, skilled therapists who specialize in anxiety, sophisticated medications, treatment methods that are proven to have helped countless people, and the highly sophisticated understanding of the impact the disorder has on the brain. Now, perhaps most important, I think of the friends and fellow patients I have known over the years who have also struggled and recovered. There's so much proof and so much promise, so many reasons to have hope.
So many reasons to have hope. Just listening to you describe stopping the panic attack that you had in your office while you were writing, that brings me so much hope, and I know will bring so many people hope that it can be done. And you did a great job describing how you did it. Thank you for doing that.
Well, it was miraculous to me, and it's happened again since then. And again, I knew what to do. So, Valerie, I hate to do this, but it is time to bring this topic to a close. And Valerie and I hope that we have provided practical and inspirational information about anxiety to you, our listeners everywhere. Now, in our own lives in recovery, anxiety has been a destructive, powerful, omnipresent force that took years to overcome. But today we're both so grateful to be able to present the subject with our own perspectives and proven abilities to conquer this terrible disorder. Now the most common of all mental illnesses, and a challenge to almost 20% of Americans who truly are living in the age of anxiety. And now, to bring us all a little relief and to get us focused on the battle against anxiety and what it's like to live without it, Valerie will take us into a mindfulness exercise.
Yes, I will. And what is mindfulness? I always give a definition. Mindfulness is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations without judgment. Today's mindfulness exercise is about exactly that, accepting our thoughts without judgment. My anxiety is often brought on by judging my own thoughts as bad or wrong, or judging other people's thoughts about me as bad or negative or wrong. I can also have shame or guilt about my thoughts, which is also judgment. Knowing that thoughts aren't facts helps me not judge my thoughts. Because, my thoughts are my mental ideas, and they're subjective, not objective truths. My thoughts can be influenced by my mood, by past experiences. They are my personal interpretation of experiences and can be colored by my emotions. So by accepting my thoughts without judgment, through mindful awareness, I can observe them without immediately believing them. So let's try it. I'll walk you through it. Let's get mindful. If you're driving or walking, please adapt this mindfulness exercise in such a way that it works in your current surroundings. If you can, find a comfortable seated position. Try closing your eyes if it's safe to do so. Settle in and breathe. As always, let's begin with a few diaphragmatic breaths. Whether your eyes are open or closed, let's steady our breathing with 2 diaphragmatic breaths. When you do this on your own, take as many breaths as you need to become calm and centered. I usually take about 10 diaphragmatic breaths to begin my mindfulness and meditation practice. Let's breathe. Inhale through your nose, expanding an imaginary balloon in your stomach. Exhale through your mouth, pulling in your stomach as you do so, forcefully exhaling. Again, inhale through your nose, drop your shoulders, expand that balloon. Exhale through your mouth, pulling in your stomach, exhaling forcefully. Pull your stomach all the way in. Keep this slow, steady breath going. If you can, bring to mind a situation, a conversation, or an event around which you have lingering and or challenging thoughts. It could be thoughts about yourself, thoughts about others, or maybe thoughts about what others are thinking about you. What are your thoughts about this situation, conversation, or event? Can you accept these thoughts without judgment? Accept these thoughts without judgment. Not good, not bad, not right, not wrong. They are thoughts, not facts. What are your thoughts about the person or people in this situation, conversation, or event? Accept these thoughts without judgment. Not good, not bad, not wrong, not right. They are thoughts, not facts. What are your thoughts about yourself in this situation, conversation, or event? What are your thoughts about what others are thinking about you? Accept all these thoughts without judgment. Not good, not bad, not right, not wrong. Just thoughts. They are thoughts, not facts. Allow yourself the choice to observe your thoughts. Allow yourself the choice to accept your thoughts without judgment. If your eyes are closed, please open them and gently bring yourself back to the room. Thank you for doing this mindfulness exercise with me.
Thank you, Valerie. I think for all of us, it's refreshing and sometimes kind of miraculous to change feelings and thoughts this radically in the midst of one of our episodes, which you did today.
Thank you.
Now, yeah.
You know what, Helen? We have a really big announcement to make.
Valerie, I'm sorry. I completely missed it. Valerie's got some fabulous news that she's now going to relate.
Yes, we have some exciting news about our website. We have a website revamp. We've added links to information on all of our guests, every one of them since we launched the podcast in 2021. We've added more resources. We've added 4 additional mindfulness exercises. And check out a few new photos of mine. There's a new cool sunset shot. So go see us. Go find us at mentalhealthhopeandrecovery.com. Just like the name of the podcast, mentalhealthhopeandrecovery.com. Come visit us and please join our community while you're there. You'll see the button. click on the join button while you're at our new revamped website.
And we would love to hear from you as well. So anything that you would post there, I accept the good news. Valerie will handle everything else.
Thanks. You know what?
Now,
you know what, Helen? There's never been anything except positive. We have never gotten a negative comment or feedback from a listener. So, hey, listeners, don't be the first. Give us your feedback.
I think you just invited someone in, Valerie, but I'll leave that to you and your conscience.
It helps us so much. We love your feedback. Please
hit the
contact button while you're there and talk to us.
And also ideas for episodes, ideas for anything we always want to improve. And so just let us hear from you, please, at our fabulous website. Now, here's, in closing, I have this fabulous, very short little anecdote from Winston Churchill. He said, "When I look back on all these worries, I remember the story of the old man who said on his deathbed that he had a lot of trouble in his life, most of which never happened." Well, I love this anecdote. We hope that it can be educational for the many people like Valerie and I who are tormented by anxiety about a cruel, malevolent future that seldom, if ever, comes. Now, the upcoming episode will be eye-opening and inspirational for a multitude of individuals fighting for recovery. Our subject will be dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. This is a comprehensive system of treatment and methods that teaches many practical skills for overcoming tidal waves of unmanageable thoughts, feelings, and actions, those that are caused by the symptoms and suffering of mental illness. DBT has saved countless lives. Mine is one of them. And it can become the foundation on which an individual can build recovery and a life worth living. And we'll have a guest expert to explain the principles, practices, and benefits of DBT. Please join us. And until then, I leave you with our favorite word, onward.
En Prime Big Deal Days, este 7 y 8 de octubre, aprovecha grandes ofertas en un nuevo spa de pies. Te transformará en la reina de la relajación.
¡Espera! ¡Tiene chorros de burbujas!
Aprovecha hasta 40% menos en Prime Big Deal Days, 7 y 8 de octubre.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.